Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into some source material that you sent us, and it's all about modern dating.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems you're pretty interested in understanding how should we say it?
A bit unconventional.
Yeah, an unconventional perspective on relationships.
Yeah, this excerpt definitely presents a cynical view of love these days.
Yeah.
But even if we don't agree with the premise, dissecting its arguments might actually reveal some interesting insights into all the anxieties surrounding modern dating.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so this source jumps right in with a pretty bold claim.
Oh, yeah.
Never tell a girl you like her.
Wow.
What's comfort? It argues that keeping women guessing is the key to holding their interest. It even compares revealing your feelings to removing the thrill of the chase.
That's the crux of it. The source uses some pretty intense imagery to illustrate this point,
Okay.
likening the dynamic to, a form of torture.
Oh, wow.
The idea is that by expressing your feelings directly, you eliminate the challenge, and that gives women the freedom to monkey branch to someone else.
Monkey branch. I'm picturing someone swinging from vine to vine, never settling in one place.
Precisely. It's a metaphor for constantly seeking something better, always looking for an upgrade rather than appreciating what you have. The source ties this behavior to what it calls a deregulated sexual marketplace.
Okay, so let's break down this deregulated sexual marketplace. What does that even mean, in the context of this source?
Well, essentially, the source is pointing to perceived societal shifts that have supposedly upended traditional relationship models.
Okay.
They cite things like no-fault divorce and more fluid dating dynamics as evidence of this deregulation. The argument is that these changes have empowered women to just continuously seek out supposedly better partners, which leaves men in a pretty precarious position.
So this source is suggesting that it's societal changes rather than individual choices or personal preferences that are driving this behavior.
That seems to be the implication. However, framing it solely as a consequence of deregulation kind of overlooks the complex interplay of individual agency and, cultural norms and economic factors that influence relationship dynamics.
Right.
For example, historically speaking, marriage often served as an economic partnership.
That's true.
As women gained greater financial independence.
Yeah.
The nature of relationships inevitably shifted as well.
That's a good point. It suggests that this perceived deregulation might actually be a reflection of greater autonomy and choice.
Right.
Particularly for women.
Exactly. And that raises the question of whether this is inherently a negative development, as the source implies, or if it could potentially lead to more fulfilling and equitable relationships based on genuine compatibility rather than societal pressure.
Interesting. This source doesn't seem too keen on individual choice, especially when it comes to women.
Yeah, no kidding.
It argues that women are socialized to constantly seek improvement in their partners, even if they feel secure in the relationship.
Yes. The source makes some pretty sweeping generalizations about women's inherent tendencies in relationships.
Right.
While every individual is different,
Of course.
attributing this behavior solely to socialization kind of overlooks the role of individual personality and values and life experiences in shaping relationship choices.
Yeah.
Psychologically speaking, humans have a fundamental need for security and attachment. To suggest that women would consistently prioritize seeking better options over fostering a secure and loving connection seems to contradict this basic human need.
So the source is essentially arguing that women will inevitably leave a relationship if they perceive a better option, regardless of their feelings or the quality of the existing relationship.
That's the gist of the argument, and it's a rather pessimistic view of female agency.
Yeah.
This perspective seems to ignore the possibility that women, like anyone else, are capable of making choices based on a variety of factors, including emotional connection and shared values and long-term compatibility.
Okay. It's interesting that the source criticizes women for this monkey branching behavior,
Yeah.
but then goes on to advise men to do the same.
Yeah, that's a head-scratcher.
In fact, it encourages men to intentionally create insecurity in their relationships as a way to prevent women from leaving.
Yes, this is where things get ethically complicated.
Yeah.
The source frames this manipulation as a necessary evil in this so-called deregulated dating landscape.
Right.
It's a tactic designed to preempt women from leaving, even if it means undermining the very foundation of trust and security within the relationship.
But wouldn't that kind of manipulation ultimately backfire? like creating a climate of fear and uncertainty doesn't exactly sound like a recipe for a healthy and loving relationship.
You're absolutely right. From a psychological standpoint, constantly feeling insecure or threatened within a relationship can lead to anxiety and resentment and ultimately a breakdown of trust.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what you'd want in a healthy and fulfilling partnership.
Right.
This source seems to prioritize a short-term strategy of control over fostering a genuine connection. It's kind of fascinating how this source frames relationships as a game.
A game.
Yeah, with like winners and losers, strategies and tactics.
It's like they're suggesting that love is some kind of battlefield where you need to constantly outsmart your opponent to avoid getting hurt.
And that framing itself is problematic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it creates a dynamic of distrust and competition, which undermines the collaborative and supportive nature that should be at the heart of a healthy relationship.
Okay, so the source even acknowledges that this game is ugly and despicable,
Right.
but insists that it's simply the reality of modern dating. It's like they're designed to this cynical view,
Yeah.
suggesting that even if we don't like the rules, we're forced to play by them.
But that raises an important question. Why accept these rules at all? Who benefits from perpetuating this idea that relationships are inherently a game of manipulation and control?
Right.
I mean, societal norms and expectations are constantly evolving. We don't have to passively accept a dating culture that breeds anxiety and insecurity.
The source seems to be clinging to this idea of the past as like a golden age of relationships. They even reference classic literature like Anna Karenina to suggest that things were simpler and more straightforward back then.
It's a romanticized view of history that ignores the very real constraints and inequalities that existed in those times.
Okay.
While social norms may have been more rigid, that didn't necessarily translate into happier or healthier relationships.
Yeah.
In fact, those rigid norms often trapped people in unhappy or even abusive situations.
It seems like the source is longing for a time when men and women had clearly defined roles and expectations. But isn't that part of what they see as the problem now? Like the lines have blurred and they're struggling to adapt?
It's a pretty common reaction to social change.
Yeah.
The source seems to be grappling with the anxieties of a shifting landscape where traditional gender roles and relationship dynamics are being challenged. Instead of embracing this change as an opportunity for growth and evolution, they view it as a threat, a loss of control.
So is this source's perspective simply a reflection of their own discomfort with change? Or is it tapping into a broader societal anxiety about the evolving dynamics between men and women?
It's probably a combination of both.
Right.
While this particular source presents an extreme viewpoint, it does touch on certain anxieties that resonate with some segments of society.
Okay.
I mean, we're living in a time of rapid social transformation, and it's understandable that some people feel uncertain or even threatened by these shifts.
The source seems especially concerned about the perceived power shift towards women in modern dating. They argue that men need to resort to manipulative tactics to keep women in line in this new landscape.
That perspective reflects a fear-based and zero-sum mentality where any progress towards gender equality is perceived as a loss for men.
Okay.
It's this idea that if women gain more power or autonomy, men inevitably lose theirs.
Right.
But that's a false dichotomy. True equality isn't about one gender dominating the other.
Right.
It's about creating a more balanced and equitable dynamic where both partners can thrive.
So instead of viewing this so-called deregulation as a threat, maybe we should see it as an opportunity to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships based on mutual respect and understanding.
Precisely. Instead of clinging to outdated tactics and mindsets,
Right.
we can embrace the potential for greater communication and intimacy and equality in our relationships.
Yeah.
It requires a shift in perspective, letting go of fear and control, and embracing vulnerability and collaboration.
This source seems convinced that playing the game is the only way to survive in modern dating. But maybe the real game changer is to step outside those limiting rules and create our own script.
I love that we don't have to be passive participants in a game that's rigged against us.
Yeah.
We can create our own rules that are based on respect, honesty, and genuine connection.
You know, it's almost refreshing to step back from that pretty bleak perspective.
Yeah.
Because it's so at odds with the countless examples of healthy, loving relationships that we see every day.
It's a good reminder that this source is just one viewpoint,
Right.
and a pretty extreme one at that. It's important to remember that not everyone approaches dating with this level of cynicism and manipulation.
Exactly. So let's explore those other perspectives, the ones that emphasize more positive and authentic approach to building relationships. If playing the game isn't the answer, then what is? What does a healthier approach to dating and relationships actually look like?
Well, I think it all starts with shifting our mindset. Instead of viewing relationships as a battlefield where you need to outwit your opponent, we can approach them as a collaborative journey.
So rather than seeing our partners as adversaries, we should see them as teammates working together towards a shared goal.
Exactly. And that shared goal is to create a relationship based on mutual respect, support, and understanding. It's about fostering a space where both partners feel safe, valued, and loved for who they truly are.
This source we've been talking about seems to believe that vulnerability is a weakness, something to be hidden away.
Right.
But you suggested that it's actually a strength, a key ingredient for building real intimacy.
Absolutely. Vulnerability is about letting your guard down and allowing your partner to see your true self, imperfections and all. It's about trusting them enough to handle your emotions, your fears, your hopes. And when both partners are willing to be vulnerable with each other, it creates a profound sense of connection that just can't be replicated through games or manipulation.
It's about letting go of that need to control the situation,
Yeah.
to curate this perfect image. It's about being present and authentic in the relationship.
Precisely. It's about embracing the messiness and uncertainty that comes with opening yourself up to another person. Because in those moments of vulnerability, those shared moments of imperfection, true intimacy is born.
The source seems to be fixated on keeping someone guessing as a way to maintain their interest. But from what you said, that seems more likely to create unnecessary drama and anxiety than genuine attraction.
You're right. Relationships thrive on clear communication and emotional honesty. When you're constantly trying to second-guess your partner's thoughts and feelings, it creates a breeding ground for insecurity and mistrust.
So rather than playing hard to get or trying to manufacture scarcity, we should just be upfront about our feelings and intentions.
Exactly. Open and honest communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship. It allows you to build trust and intimacy, navigate conflicts effectively, and create a shared vision for the future.
This source we've been dissecting seems to view relationships through a purely transactional lens, like some kind of cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
But you're suggesting that it should be about something much deeper than that.
Relationships are about connection. They're about sharing your life with someone who truly understands and appreciates you. They're about finding someone who complements your strengths, supports your dreams, and challenges you to grow and evolve as an individual.
And that kind of connection can't be manufactured through manipulation or game playing. It requires authenticity, vulnerability, and a willingness to put in the effort to nurture the relationship.
You've hit the nail on the head. Building a lasting, loving relationship requires commitment, open communication, and a shared desire to create something meaningful together.
It seems like this source has lost sight of those core elements. They're so consumed by fear, by the anxiety of being hurt or abandoned, that they've resorted to tactics that ultimately sabotage their own chances of finding true happiness.
It's a common trap. When we let fear dictate our actions, we often end up creating the very outcomes we're trying to avoid.
So what's the key takeaway for our listener today? What can they learn from this deep dive into this particular, rather cynical perspective on dating?
I think the most important takeaway is that we have a choice. We don't have to accept the cynical, manipulative worldview presented in this source material. We can choose to approach dating and relationships with an open heart, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a belief in the power of love to transform our lives.
Instead of seeing relationships as a battlefield, we can choose to embrace them as a shared journey, an opportunity to grow, learn, and experience the profound joy of deep connection.
Exactly. And that is ultimately a much more fulfilling and rewarding path.
Well, listener, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We unpacked a rather unconventional perspective on modern dating and relationships. We challenged its assumptions, explored its flaws, and most importantly, we offered a glimpse into a different way of approaching love and connection. Remember, you always have the power to choose the kind of relationship you want to create. Embrace vulnerability, communicate openly and honestly, and never underestimate the transformative power of kindness and respect in building lasting love. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.